I want to thank the governor for being here to speak. In a few minutes, we'll hear from the lieutenant governor, the attorney general, and we also have another candidate for governor here, Yancey McGill. I want to thank you all for taking time to come today. You know, all of us have limited time, limited resources. What you do with your time reflects your priorities in life. State legislature is no different than that. They have a limited amount of time to get things done. I clipped a little article earlier this week. It says, Vermont permits recreational use of pot. Now listen to this. Making the state the first in the country to authorize the recreational use of the substance by an act of a state legislature. So Vermont is the first state in the country where a state legislature took the time and the energy and all that goes into passing a bill like that to make the recreational use of marijuana legal. There's a little Christian classic I read several decades ago called Tyranny of the Urgent. And the thesis of the little book is that, you know, we all have limited time in life to do the things that we want to do. And if we're not careful, those things that are urgent, the little fires that are always popping up in life, will consume all of your time and all of your energy to the neglect of things that are really important, that constantly get pushed to the back burner in life. A body of legislators is the same way. You know, there's always going to be a crisis in South Carolina that the legislature needs to deal with. Whether it's the state of our roads, the pension, unfunded pension liability, the nuclear debacle that we're dealing with now, there's always something. And sometimes these things are very important. All of us would agree that a $9.5 billion project that has gone belly up is a very important thing that the legislature must do something about. But we must stop and we must ask our legislators to stop and really think and consider the question, is that more important than the 5,000 human beings that are going to be killed in this state this year by abortion? Is it? Is it more urgent? Should it take precedence? What about all the other bills that are going to be put on the floor of the Senate and of the House for debate this year? Some of them we might not even think about as urgent or important. You know, the battle we're facing right now in the progress of personhood is in the South Carolina Senate. We have to get this bill out of committee and onto the Senate floor before we ever have a chance at a debate or a vote. And it all comes back to this thing of, well, what's most important? How are we going to spend these few months of the legislative session in South Carolina in 2018? I want to share a few numbers with you that you're going to hear probably more than once. 45 and 60. 45 years ago, Roe v. Wade decision struck down laws restricting and prohibiting abortion in our country. Since then, 60 million unborn babies have been destroyed. I want to take you back in time a little while and help you to understand this and how this has progressed. In 1988, an organization called Operation Rescue burst on the scene nationwide. Think about 1988 was 15 years after Roe v. Wade. 15 years. We're now at 45. Many of you don't know this, but over 75,000 peaceful pro-life arrests took place in front of abortion mills and sometimes inside of abortion mills over a period of about 4 or 5 years. 75,000 has been the largest movement of nonviolent civil disobedience in the history of our nation. I remember back then when we would talk about the numbers of abortion and we were using the terms 20 million and then 22 and then 25, and we were horrified. That was 30 years ago. Now let me take you back to a point in time 20 years ago, 1998 in South Carolina. The first personhood bill was introduced in 1998. It was introduced in the Senate through Mike Fair and in the House through the late Terry Haskins. That was 20 years ago. 20 years ago, we were talking about the fact that 35 to 40 million unborn babies in the nation had been destroyed by abortion. That was 20 years ago. Now let me tell you one thing that's been consistent from 30 years ago to 20 years ago. And that's been the idea that we need to wait. We need to wait for a better time. We need to wait for a more sympathetic Supreme Court. The same court that gave us Roe v. Wade, we need to wait on them. That was 20 years ago. We've been introducing personhood bills in South Carolina for 20 years. It was until 2 years ago that we actually got a bill out of a subcommittee in the Senate on personhood. We failed by one vote in getting it to the Senate floor 2 years ago. So now we're out of subcommittee with S-217. It's in full Judiciary Committee. It should be on the agenda when the Senate Judiciary Committee meets next, which should be next week. I know that you're here because you care, because this is something that's passionate to you and important to you. I want to urge you to take that sense of passion and urgency and try to transmit that to your state senator. They've got to feel what you feel. And there's no reason they shouldn't, because they represent you. Three things in talking with a state senator to keep in mind. One, be humble, but be firm. They represent you. They work for you. Number two, be polite, but you have to be resolute. They must understand that you are not wavering on this issue, that you are not looking to them for guidance, that you are trying to express your sincerely held beliefs to them. Number three, you need to be kind, but you need to be insistent. Insistent. You must transmit to them your determination and your resolution that this be heard on the floor and voted on in the South Carolina Senate. This bill, S-217, was introduced in the Senate last January by Senator Kevin Bryant. I called him, he was at the time my senator, and asked him to introduce the bill because I knew that he would take a stand and speak up for life and for personhood. And of course, he is now the lieutenant governor, and I'm glad that he's in that position. At the same time, because that was already in the works, I called Senator Rex Rice from Pickens and asked him to sign on to the bill as the first co-sponsor, so that as soon as Kevin Bryant became lieutenant governor, he could become the leader in the Senate on this effort, and he also has done a very fine job over the past year. At this time, I want to introduce Senator Bryant to you, Lieutenant Governor Bryant, someone I have known for many years and supported for many years, someone who has a firm and unwavering conviction about protecting innocent life and the role and the responsibility of the government to do that. My friend, your Lieutenant Governor, Kevin Bryant.